I'm going to fumble over that name quite a bit this week. It's a kind of a tongue twister. W.I.N Google BigQuery Basics. Lesson 1, BigQuery, the Foundations. So for those of you that are here with us live, welcome. And those of you that are watching the replay, welcome as well. So how this is going to work, this is broken up into different lessons, obviously, and then we have different topics, and you're going to hear us kind of have intros and outros, and it might seem kind of a little bit repetitive, but that's just so our video editor Vince can have nice clean cuts for what we call our student editions back in the Measurement Marketing Academy. So that's just why you hear that. So again, appreciate that you're here live. But that's what you'll be hearing at the very end. So we're going to close out this particular lesson, and then we will start the Q&A. If you are here live, definitely use chat or voice, or ask your questions that way. If you're watching on the replay and you have questions, use your Ask an Instructor support in your Measurement Marketing Academy, and let us know which particular course you're having a question on or which particular lesson you have a question on, and we will make sure to address that question. And we can maybe even reply to it in the following lesson so that everyone else can hear that answer too, because they might have that question and just didn't know how to ask it. So we definitely encourage those questions to come through. All right, what is our schedule for this particular course? Lesson 1, which is the one that you are in now, BigQuery, the Foundations. And so welcome to our YouTube audience, being able to watch this particular lesson today live with us. Obviously the foundations, you're going to find out a little bit more about BigQuery and if it's going to be right for you or your clients. And then in lesson 2 is going to be at the exact same time tomorrow. And that is where you're going to have your first BigQuery query. And really kind of dive a little bit deeper into this tool to find out if it's right for you. And again, same time as it is right now is when the lesson is for tomorrow. Then on Wednesday, April 20th, exact same time, again, you're going to learn different cases for using BigQuery and common problems it may solve. Again, finding out if it's right for you. And then finally in lesson 4, which is our final lesson, so it's only 4 lessons this week, it's going to be again at the exact same time, 1 p.m. Eastern. Learn how to future-proof your measurement with BigQuery, as we have all these different things coming up with privacy and deprecation of universal into going into GA4 and all these different tools. Find out how BigQuery can help you future-proof your measurement. So that is what our schedule is. Again, all 4 days, exact same time. And if you can't attend live, definitely make sure you're able to watch those replays and ask questions and ask an instructor. We're definitely here to help you. All right, so let's go ahead and get started with W.I.N Google BigQuery Basics, Lesson 1, BigQuery the Foundations. W.I.N Google BigQuery Basics, Lesson 1, BigQuery, the Foundations. Welcome, I am Julie Roddy, lead instructor at measurementmarketing.io. I've been with the measurementmarketing.io team since 2015 and have been an instructor since 2017. And we worked with all kinds of different types of clients. And so worked with all kinds of different platforms, and we helped them, capture their measurement analytics and tag manager and reports with Data Studio and all kind of other things. And you probably also know me from Ask an Instructor with inside your Measurement Marketing Academy. And so if you haven't been back there, definitely reach out and say hi. I'd love to hear from you. And you are not going to be actually hearing all about BigQuery from me. We're actually having a guest instructor, JJ Reynolds, come and help us out with this topic. And so JJ has helped us out with a previous course, W.I.N Google Data Studio Beyond Basics. So you might recognize him from there, but he's really good with all things Data Studio and with reporting. And he definitely helps all his clients with measurement implementations and with growth. And he is on a mission. It's kind of fun, but it is 100% true. He's on a mission to make reporting fun, enjoyable, and actionable, even for the most data avoidant person. And I think in the next couple of lessons, you're definitely going to understand what we mean, but I promise you that's 100% true. JJ always makes learning a little bit more fun, even if it's kind of boring topics, but I promise he'll make it fun. All right, and as I mentioned, he's a data studio wizard as well, and he's also as you can see, the founder of Media Authentic and of Data Studio VIP, and we'll show you a little bit later if you need to get in touch with him how to do that. So with all things measurement, we always come back to our measurement marketing framework. If this looks a little bit new to you, then definitely go through our measurement marketing framework course. It's called W.I.N, the Measurement Marketing Framework, and it'll dive deep into each one of these different parts for you. But for today, we're just going to take like a 30,000 foot view. So as you can see in your bottom left-hand corner, you're starting out marketing in the blind. You're very reactive to what is going on. You don't know what's working and what's not, and you want to be able to kind of understand what's happening. So if you as you follow through the measure marketing framework, not if, because you want to do this, as you go through the measure marketing framework, you're going to go through these 3 steps that are on your left-hand side: plan, build, and launch. And during these steps, you're going to go through different parts of your framework to kind of as you go through. So in the plan, you're going to have your questions. You're going to make sure you're asking the right questions to get the right information so that you can take natural action. Thus, you're going to be able to have the results and understand the traffic and then build a better story. What does that mean? You're going to be able to understand the story so that you can go on to the following step, which is launch. So you can listen, forecast, and optimize. So again, this is a 30,000 foot view, but we just took ourselves from being very reactive in marketing the blind all the way to the top, where we are now proactive in being able to reliably grow our revenue and profits. And that's what we're trying to do. So with BigQuery, where does that fall? Well, we're mainly going to be in the plan and build steps during this entire course so that you can listen to a better story, forecast, and optimize better. So it's all connected still, but for this particular course, we're going to be bouncing back and forth between plan and build, and you'll see what we mean as we go through. All right, one thing, what does this mean? It means as you go through this particular lesson, kind of think one thing. Don't try to grab all the things because it's going to probably overwhelm you, and we don't want that. We just, grab one thing that you can take and implement, and then maybe later on, watch the course again, watch this lesson again, and get something else. So what is it that's going to be covered in this particular lesson? Well, you're going to learn what is BigQuery and when to use it. You're going to learn how to create a BigQuery account, syncing BigQuery with Google Analytics 4, and an overview of the BigQuery interface. So let's go ahead and get started with W.I.N Google BigQuery Basics, Lesson 1, Topic 1, what is BigQuery and when to use it? See you there. W.I.N Google BigQuery Basics, Lesson 1, Topic 1, what is BigQuery and when to use it? Let's go ahead and jump right in with our guest instructor, JJ Reynolds. JJ, take it away.
All right, give me 1 second to find the right screen here. All right. Welcome everybody to the world of BigQuery. So we are just going to hop right into it, and we're going to hop with a overview. I love to say that BigQuery is where marketer meets developer, and you can have any slice of these combinations. So you could be more marketer, like 90% marketer and 10% knowing a little bit of development, right? But you are going to have a little bit of knowledge of how things kind of flow together, how things work with one another, because you're going to slowly start to build out some more robust measurements using BigQuery. So we're just going to hop into a 20,000 foot overview. We're going to keep it high level on this first lesson so that we can make sure we don't lose anybody as far as what we're even talking about. So the first thing to note is that BigQuery is just one of many Google Cloud products. So if you head over to cloud.google.com, there are 100 plus, like you can see at the very bottom left here, you can see products 100 plus, and data analytics is BigQuery is one of them. So just keep that in mind. BigQuery is just one of hundreds of Google Cloud products, and they all work together to get you the answers to your questions, right? And that's the thing to remember, is that we're looking at one specific product in the fleet of Google Cloud. So just keep that in mind when you start getting asked to like maybe approve a different service. You might be actually using a separate service instead of just BigQuery by itself. Where do you find this? If you go over to cloud.google.com/BigQuery, and you can read all of the nitty gritty about the nuances of BigQuery. But what is it? People have been asked me a couple of times, when do I use it? What in the world is BigQuery? And the easiest analogy I have is it is Google Sheets on steroids. Google Sheets had a 5 million cell limit, so cells, not necessarily rows, right? You could have 10 rows with 2.5 million cells, or you can have any combination, right? That the cells is what they look at. I believe they just raised that to 10 million, so they doubled it. And I'm going to show you some tables that have 50 million rows with hundreds of columns, right? So BigQuery, there's no limit. I've seen billions of cells in a BigQuery table, so nothing to worry if you ever are concerned with size of your data. It's basically a giant table, right? That's the thing to remember. It's going to look scary. It's going to look different. It's going to be a whole different beast, but just remember, it is a giant table. You have rows, you have columns, there's certain nuances, but that's at the end of the day, what we're looking at. The things that you need to know about BigQuery is that it holds information, a lot of information, right? That's what we're here for. We basically have a lot of information to make questions about. You then have to use SQL, SQL. I've used those words interchangeably. Some people have one preference to the other, so there will be some code, and it's another language, right? It does cost money, right? It does cost pennies, literal pennies. I'm going to give you some examples of that in the next lesson, but it does cost money, so you have to have a billing account. Getting information into your BigQuery table account is the strategy, right? So the strategy of BigQuery, in my personal opinion, is how you're going to get information into it and what are you going to do with that information. Most of your cost, in my experience, goes into getting information into BigQuery. That's where most of the cost comes down to, because querying and storing information is almost negligible as far as the cost. And the most important piece here is your strategy is more important than your SQL knowledge. You're going to be frustrated if you don't know SQL. You'll be like, wow, this is confusing. I don't know what's happening. I'm going to try and walk you through it the best that I can. But just remember, it's a language. You can say the girl jumped over the log, or you can say the log was underneath the girl. Like, there's a bajillion ways to say something in English. And there's also just as many ways to say that in SQL. So just remember, your strategy of the questions you're asking and your desired outcome is where you need to keep the most of your time, because otherwise you'll be going in circles asking queries of different things, and you can always hire a developer. So why use it? There are 5 main benefits that I would like to highlight here. The first is unlimited data, right? You don't ever have to worry about running out of space. The second is speedy reporting. So Data Studio is a native integration to BigQuery. You can just select it from your Data Studio account, and you can load, again, I've loaded accounts with hundreds of millions of rows, and the reports load in less than 2 seconds. So that is one of the biggest nuances. You have advanced queries and joins, so it's really, really easy to join information together, because that's one of the beauties of SQL. And you're able to run really, really advanced queries that you could probably do in Data Studio. It would just be really complicated. You have unlimited data sources, so you can dream really, really big. So you could pull in you're not limited by any type of connector or anything. It's an API. You can use an API if you'd like to. You can use Zapier. They have a BigQuery integration if you ever wanted to write information from something else to BigQuery. It might get expensive as far as the Zapier costs, but there's no limit as far as the information that you can gather. Lastly, you own the data, because that is something that you really, really want to own. And then I added in a little bonus, 5.5, to round it up to 6, is you can make your data really, really clean, right? So you can clean up everything inside of BigQuery, and then you can go from there as far as making a beautiful visualization inside of Data Studio with your really clean data. So now you might be saying, JJ, what are you talking about? And that is totally okay, because we are going to get your feet wet, and we are going to talk about the structures of BigQuery. And then we're going to set our gaze on the horizon, and we're going to start diving into actually querying information. So let's get started. And in the next lesson, we are going to talk about accounts, pricing, and all of that information. So let's get things started.
Taking back the screen share. All right, thank you so much for that, JJ. And as promised, I told you guys he was going to make it fun for us. So that was W.I.N Google BigQuery Basics, Lesson 1, Topic 1, what is BigQuery and when to use it? Coming up next, Lesson 1, Topic 2, creating a BigQuery account. See you there. W.I.N Google BigQuery Basics, Lesson 1, Topic 2, creating a BigQuery account. Let's go ahead and jump in with our guest instructor, JJ. Take it away, JJ.
Alrighty, let's get you an account. So I'm going to step you through exactly how to do this. It's fairly well prompted. There have been a few changes recently that I'm going to try and make note of. So head over to cloud.google.com, and you are going to set up a Google Cloud account. And it's not BigQuery specific. It works for all 100 plus products. So just keep that in mind. And you hit that little get started for free button, and you are off to the races. First thing you're going to do is you're going to set up your account, right? You have to select the country that you're from, and then what best describes your organization. All of these are, I'd say most of us are small. I even have small company as far as what we use it for. So you can select what best describes your needs. You then need to get all of this two-factor authentication and that up and running. And then you're going to select the business type, and you're going to just write in your business name. And so I'm going to pause right here as far as the business name. This is going to be inside of BigQuery. It's a business organization name is going to be the highest level of organization you have. So what I recommend is if you're a business that's doing this for yourself, you just name that your business, like widgetsrus.com is your business name. And then if you are an agency or a consultant, you'd want to set this up as your business name, unless you're doing this for a client, obviously, on the other hand. So we usually, that's another strategy, but just keep it at the highest level. Don't name it as like, hey, project number 1. You want to put that as your actual business name. Then you're going to be prompted to add a credit card. This is not required, but I'd really recommend it because your costs are going to be very nominal. Like if I guess $3 a month is an extra cost, it probably won't even be that at the end of the day. But I would recommend setting it up just because you can then unlock the full capacity of everything, but you do not need to add billing if you do not want to when you first set things up. They're then going to be inside of dropped right into the Google Cloud account, and you are right there. So then there's some questions about like how you found us. You don't have to answer them. You can close that and skip it. But if you want to give Google more information, you can do that as well. It's going to ask you your role. So just put in something that makes sense. And then you're going to be right here. It's going to give you my first project, some type of random ID, and you now have a cloud account. So that is the steps to set up your cloud account. If you ever got lost, feel free to just restart, head back to cloud.google.com and get that set up. You, by default, have, I believe it's they keep changing the time period. It used to be like $100 for a year, and now it's like $300 for 90 days. So you have a free credit. And if you use that credit, you are doing a lot of really big things. I've never use the credits that they've given for any accounts I've ever set up. So feel free to query to your heart's desire when you're in that trial period, and you won't incur any costs. So you now have a Google Cloud account. You can put your little party hat on and you can blow your whistle. I just want to check in. Hope you're feeling okay, right? It's not too crazy if you're following along live and pausing this video, just making sure that you are not overwhelmed yet, right? We just want to make sure that we're all feeling good in the hood. Okay. Now let's talk pricing. So pricing is something that I want to get out of the way first because it's fairly complicated. If you head over to BigQuery or Google Cloud or cloud.google.com/BigQuery/pricing, you are then able to kind of figure out what that's going to cost you. But I'm going to give you some examples right now, just because I want to give you real world examples of kind of like what costs I'm seeing for like our clients, for our people, for everything that we're slowly working on. And here is the way that they break things down. So there are two different types of pricing. You have analysis pricing, which I have deemed the questions you ask and answers and amount of info you need to get that information. So this is what some people in the SQL world will call queries. So analysis pricing is how much it costs you to say, for example, say you have 100 rows of all customers and you say, I want to only see customers whose first name starts with Becky. Well, in order to run that query, you have to look at all 100 rows and then just return the big query or the table, the row with the first name of Becky. And so it's going to cost you to look at all 100 rows, however much that is, and then return that to you. So that's what analysis pricing is. Then you have storage pricing. So that's the amount of information you're keeping in BigQuery. So just think of if you have an extra storage unit for your house, or if you have a garage, that's the storage pricing, is how much it's going to cost you to keep all of that stuff covered, safe, and secure on Google's servers. Analysis pricing. You have the first terabyte of queries for free. So just terabyte with a T, right? So just for everybody who doesn't know, a kilobyte is the smallest unit. Then we have gigabyte, which is 1,000 kilobytes. And then you have terabyte, which is 1,000 gigabytes. So it's a lot of information to query. And if you have a terabyte of information, it is quite substantial. Most of the time, we'll run queries once per day. So 9 times out of 10, that's what we do, is where we'll set a query to run every day at like 1 a.m. for the previous day. So you're only running 30 like scheduled queries that are running. So if each query is 3 gigabytes, you'd hit that terabyte at the end of it. So just keep that in mind. You have a first terabyte free. For most people, that's plenty. And it's only $5 per terabyte afterwards, which is quite affordable. Storage pricing, on the other hand, so now that we're out of that, there's storage pricing is then divided into 2 separate types of storage. You have active storage. So that's any table that has been modified in the last 90 days. So just keep that in mind, is that active storage has a different pricing than long-term storage. And then long-term storage is, imagine if you just uploaded a giant Excel spreadsheet, or you just uploaded some data with the weather from every single year dating back past the 2000s, right? Just all the way back throughout the entire span of human history. And then you never touched it again, right? Like just because it's there, you're storing it there, that would be long-term storage. So it's just 50% the cost. So again, no difference in performance, durability, any of those things, and it will do it automatically. You don't have to click a button of like, now this is long-term storage. So hopefully you have a slight understanding of how this is going to start pricing. And now I'm going to give you some examples from the real world. We're going to call that name that BigQuery price. Okay. So here is the criteria. I just took a snapshot of basically this month. You're going to have 2 attempts, and this is real client accounts. So here you have some real examples, and I'll pause for you to jot down your answer in your head. So here is the first example. We have every live ad in a Facebook ad account reported daily with an ad spend of between $10,000 and $120,000 a month for the past year and a half. All right, so just keep that in mind. We're spending, this client is spending, so it ranges between $10,000 a month and $120,000 a month. And we're loading every single ad that has ever been live every single day, a snapshot of that ad's results into BigQuery for the past year and a half. All right, you have your guesses down. Hint is it's less than $100. And thank you so much for playing. We have not hit a penny yet for that client yet for this month. So that is an example of you'll be billed 1 penny, it rounds up to a penny. So some clients will just have a bill of, it'll say 0 and you'll get a bill for 1 penny. And so that's an example of what that looks like, right? Okay, example number 2. Here is we have a second example. This is bigger, right? We got a table size of 6 gigabytes with 44 million rows. So remember, I told you that the limit of Google Sheets information, right, is 5 million cells. Here we have 44 million rows, and I believe this single table has probably like 50 to 80 columns, right? So whatever that math is of 40 million times 80 is how many cells that we're looking at. 6 gigabyte table. You couldn't even do that. I don't even think Google or Microsoft Excel would even handle that. So here's the criteria. It queries nearly the entire table every day. So every day this entire table loads and adds data daily. So think about that. Just remember, adding information every day. We're querying the entire table. So it's all active. It's all active storage. None of this is the long-term storage. And month to date, we are looking at a grand total of 31 cents. So that is kind of where we're looking at the costs, right? I'd say like most of the time, if you're just using BigQuery, you're looking at 31 cents. Like, I don't think we've ever gone above even like $5 on most of our like small to mid-sized businesses. So that is the beauty of BigQuery. So now pricing, what that looks like as far as how much it's going to cost. Again, go to cloud.google.bigquery or /BigQuery/pricing. And that is where you can find all of the pricing details for if you needed a specific situation there. All right. So now that you have the pricing enabled, we now understand how the pricing works. Let's get set up with GA4 in the next lesson. So excited to see you there.
All right, thank you so much for that, JJ. And it always shocks me how much BigQuery does not cost. I think a lot of us have that impression that it's going to be really expensive, and you have continued to surprise us that it really is actually really cheap. So that was When Google BigQuery Basics Lesson 1, Topic 2, Creating a BigQuery Account. Coming up next in Topic 3, Syncing BigQuery with Google Analytics 4. We'll see you there. When Google BigQuery Basics Lesson 1, Topic 3, Syncing BigQuery with Google Analytics 4. Let's go ahead and jump in with our guest instructor, JJ Reynolds. Let's take it away, JJ.
All right, we are going to hop right into an analytics account, and I'm going to just share my screen and give you guys the entire process of what we're looking at. So, oops, scratch that. I need to share my screen first. Do you guys see a cloud account screen?
Yep, we see cloud.google.com.
Yeah, all right, so now we're just going to talk about how to get GA4 into this thing called Google Cloud BigQuery, right? And that's what most people, I think, are going to be using this for in the near future, especially when it comes to measurement marketing, right? Of getting those informations, those actions out of your analytics account and your overarching business. So what you're going to want to do, and this is kind of the setup. So I'm going to skip ahead a lesson and we're going to get this set up so we can get GA4 data start flowing into your account. So here, once you're in the cloud.google.com, head up to this little console button at the top right, and it's going to log you into your cloud console. It looks really scary, and I know that. Okay, so just remember that. I'm going to give you a detailed explanation in the next lesson of every single thing, but right now we're just going to race straight to getting GA4 set up, because if you stop in this lesson, I want you to have GA4 flowing in here so you can look at all the information starting from today. So what you're going to do is you're going to select this little drop down up here. What you're looking at is every single, if you hit all, it will give you your organization, right? So you've got our organization at the top, and then it will give you the system of G Suite, and then you have your projects. But again, what we're going to do is just set up a new project, because we need a project to put our Google Analytics 4 account into. And so here you're going to set a new project, and we're just going to set this up as demo demo for GA4. But the one thing you need to remember about BigQuery in general is they are hyper strict about naming things. So 9 times out of 10, when you name something in BigQuery, whether it's a project, a table, all the things we're going to talk about, you most likely will never be able to change it. So just keep that in mind if you're a person who's like making Word docs of like final 2, use this one. Just remember, you can't change these names. It's not like a Word doc. In general, if you do have to change it, you have to create a whole new table, and it's a whole ordeal. So here we're just gonna name demo GA4 for, we're gonna set it up for data studio.vip, right? So you cannot use different characters, so just keep that in mind. I believe periods are not allowed, but it usually gives you a prompt, right? So here we have our demo GA4 account. You're going to select that organization. Remember, we'd set that up in the last lesson of, hey, this is the organization that you use, and then you can have the location or the parent organization or folder, and it's right. You cannot use periods. I forgot that. And you're going to put that in the parent organization / folder. You can change that if you'd like to, but we're just going to keep it all as our defaults, because we're not going to get complicated anytime soon. So once you hit create, it's going to basically spin up this project of, whoa, here's a new project. And what you can do is just hit select project, or go to this drop down up here and now select your new project. Do not need to do anything else here. It's literally just setting up the project, and now we're going to go set up our analytics account. So now we're going to head over to analytics.google.com, which is going to be your Google Analytics account that you'd like to. Right now, we're looking at GA4, and we're going to head over to admin. And here you can select the property. So I'm going to select the dummy account that we set up yesterday for this exact use case. And at the very bottom down here, you're going to see all these product links. So in Universal Analytics, we used to have views, right? And you connect those views individually. Here, you collect a property. And a property consists of every single stream ID that is associated with this property, which you can watch the Google Analytics Basics course for if you ever have any questions about the GA4 setups. But what we're going to do is we're going to head on here where it says BigQuery links, and we're going to select that little guy. And here it says no links yet. And so you can link your project really, really simply. It's probably the easiest integration I've ever done in my entire life, is you go over here and you hit link. Now you have to choose a BigQuery project. And so what I'm going to do is select this. It's going to pop out a little module, and you're going to see all of the projects that you have in your BigQuery account. And so here is our demo GA4 VIP project, and I'm going to select that one. And then you're going to hit confirm. And now you can select where you want your data to be stored, right? You can pick a different country if you'd like to. There's a bajillion different things you can choose. I'm in the US, I pick US, but you can make that decision on your own. You're going to hit next. And now is where you start to make some decisions, including advertiser identifiers for mobile app streams. We don't have a mobile app stream, so we're not going to use that. And then here we have daily and streaming. So the reason why I had you set up your billing account is streaming will not work if you don't have a billing account that's associated with the project that we just configured. I personally don't use streaming. And so the difference between daily and streaming is that streaming continuous export within seconds of arrival. What that means in layperson's terms is that once an event shows up in GA4, it shows up in BigQuery. So it's a live sync to BigQuery. The thing they don't tell you about this is that this costs money. Again, pennies, it's probably like maybe 30, a penny a day-ish, but it costs money to have streaming checked on. Daily is free. If you set this up without a building account, you can still do a daily full export that takes place once a day. How this works, and this is me very, very important, is make sure all of your times for every GA4 account you have is the time you think it should be in. Because it will export at, I think, between midnight and 1 a.m. the previous day's data, and we'll create a new table and append that every single day. So in BigQuery, you'll just start seeing a giant table that slowly gets larger every single day with yesterday's information. I am just going to select daily. I'm not going to select streaming, even though I have that option, because I never am doing a live report, right? Of having, I want to know what's happening today, right now, within seconds. You could have it within seconds of actually getting that information within GA4. Then you're going to go right here and hit next. And it's going to just ask you to verify everything that is working. You can then say, it'll tell you how many events. Right now we don't have, this is a demi account, so there's almost no hits, but there's 1 million daily hit limit. And if you're above that, contact me and I'll be happy to set this up for you for a slight cost. Okay, so the frequency is daily, and unless you have a mobile app, don't use that. Then it hits submit. And that's it, guys. That is it. We are linked to GA4 to BigQuery. And that is the extent. You hit here, hit Command R or refresh, and you are now linked up and running. Here's your project number, your project name, the project ID, and you are good to go. Inside of your BigQuery account, you will see nothing. And I'm just going to zippity right to where I know where it is, which we're going to talk about in the next lesson. But I'm going to show you that you will see nothing. Nothing is going to show up here. It doesn't matter. It won't show up until tomorrow because that's when the GA4 data will start showing up. So that is just the quick and dirty overview of how to get your GA4 account linked to BigQuery without pulling your hair out and knowing that nothing is supposed to be here because nothing is here. So that is your GA4 setup. And in the next lesson, we're going to give you a quick demo of the entire interface of GA4 so that we're not over here crying in the corner when we don't know where to go to find our information. So I'll see you in the next lesson.
Thank you so much for that, JJ. That was When Google BigQuery Basics Lesson 1, Topic 3, Syncing BigQuery with Google Analytics 4. Coming up next in Topic 4, the overview of BigQuery interface. See you there. When Google BigQuery Basics Lesson 1, Topic 4, Overview of the BigQuery interface. Let's go ahead and jump in with our guest instructor, JJ. Take it away.
All right, we're going to hop right into BigQuery, and I'm going to give you a quick overview of what everything looks like. All right, scratch that previous part, starting here. All right, welcome. We're going to hop right into BigQuery and Google Cloud and all of the explanations that you need to get going. So by default, this is what you're going to see, is you're going to be inside of a project, which is going to give you all of this information about every one of the 100 plus applications that Google has. So this is quite overwhelming. It's really confusing. And frankly, we don't need to know 90% of the things. This is all you need to see as far as billing. It will give you an estimate of the billing for the current period, and you can view all the billing information right there. So inside of Google Cloud, we have projects, which we've already spoken about, but here is where you can access those. So at the very top here, you can select an organization. So you can have our current organization. There also is the option of having no organization, which you can select. And you might have that where maybe a project's being shared with you and there's no organization, but 9 times out of 10, you'll find it within the organization that you're looking for. You then have all these different projects, and you can see how those like every single one right here. You can then star projects. So as things get bigger, you then have the ability to add little stars to them, which makes them a dark star. And you can just view the things that you starred. And so you can star projects, and you can star each of these as an individual project, right? So, and then recent is anything you've accessed, I believe, in the last 30 days. I don't hold me to that, but I believe it's just the last ones you've seen in descending order. Okay, that's the overview. Now, you're like, where in the world, JJ, is the BigQuery? Like, I'm just here for the BigQuery because that's what we're here for, and let's go find it. So, in order to get to BigQuery, you're going to be looking for a little while if you don't follow this tutorial. So, at this hamburger menu at the very top, you're going to open your navigation menu, and by default, this is what it looks like. You have all these pinned applications. So you're like, billing. That's important, right? You want to know how much you're getting charged. API service, marketplace, all of these separate pieces, right? But here is where you can see every single product that Google has to offer. And you can scroll all the way down. And like, if you wanted to use one of these and you're a developer or you have a use case, that's awesome. But what we want to do is let's come down here and look for BigQuery, which is at the very bottom, usually. And sometimes they move things around. But I'm going to show you how to pin it to the top. So I lost it. And you just come in here and you look for BigQuery. Obviously, I don't use it in its default state. 9
Go back down.
Huh?
Go back down. It was down there. It was lower. There it is, right there.
There it is. And so what you can do is just pin this, right? You just pin this to the top, and you never have to worry about finding it in the subset of chaos that is this Google Cloud account. So if you go to the very top here, now you'll see you have BigQuery pinned right here. You can move these around if you'd like to. I usually just keep it where it is so that you have all the default ones, and then you can unpin them if you like to. So say, for example, Marketplace, no one wants to use that, or if you don't use any of these pieces, don't worry about it. So in BigQuery, if you hover over that, it brings up this bigger one, which you can see all these other beautiful, confusing options to choose from. And we're just going to use the SQL workspace. And 9 times out of 10, this is where you're going to be if you're looking at BigQuery. So inside of here, you now have it's a workspace. And so you can actually pin projects here, right? So here you can see I've pinned this and you can unpin it. I'm going to add in our stoked Elixir one, which is going to be where our GA4 starts flowing into. And then here we have our testing cool stuff, which obviously is where we want to test cool stuff, but I've pinned that right there. So inside of a project, you then have, these are called data sets. So in here is a set of data. And then inside of a set of data, you then have tables, right? So we have tables inside of a data set, inside of a project. And this is the overall, like, just try to keep things as organized as you can, because as you can see, I've got CRM contacts, CRM contacts 1, contacts 2, contacts 3 table, and then Stripe transactions, right? And you're just like, what do I even use? And this is why you want to make sure you name things appropriately on the first go. I'm just doing this for a demonstration, so you can see that don't learn from my errors. So this is where you're going to spend most of your time. You can have tables, you can have projects, etc. If you want to add data, right? That's what we want to do and you want to just practice some things. Up here is a little add data button. So here is where you can pin a project. You can search for projects and enter the project name, pin it there. But something I want to show you is the explore public data sets. It's a super cool function of Google. They're really nice of doing that. If you select that, you can then look at public data. So for example, COVID-19 public data sets. And if you click on them, it will then give you information about what is inside of this information, how it kind of works, a ton of different information about that data set. And you can look throughout all of these and say, hey, maybe social is a thing. You have Google Books, and you maybe want to look at all the Google Books data. Hey, it's right there. You can also maybe look at the one that I think is really cool. If you go to databases, you have the weather, so the climatology data of the weather of, I believe it's the world. So you can look at a ton of different information about the global weather, if that was something that you wanted to look at. And then lastly, we're going to look at the census. So you can actually just type in here if you know what you're looking for, Census Bureau US boundaries, and you can look at all these different census information. So here, if we just select that, you can then view the data set and you are now off to the races. It will open up in a new tab and you should be good to go. So now that you have all of this information, like, hey, that's where you can view things, let's make a data set. And this is where I want to show you just the basics of what you have. So again, we have here, I'm just going to click on one of these. This is all fake data. Don't ever even, like, it's all fake. Don't try to be scraping on my screen for potential leads for your business here. So CRM contacts too, where it is basically have, this is what you'll look at, is you have a schema, and then you have details, and then, oh, sorry, one sec. We'll look at table 3. We have schema, we have details, and we have a preview. And so here is where these are the 3 tabs you'll have on every single table. And the schema just tells you what it is. So here, the field name is the column, right? If you're looking at Google Sheets, address, city, etc. The type, you have data, date, string, integer. There's things called floats. There's a whole bunch of other stuff, but it just gives you a snapshot of every single field in this table. You can head over to details. This is where it'll tell you how big the size of the table is, how much long-term storage you're using, the number of rows that you have, when it was created, and when it was last modified. You then have table expiration and all of these other things. And then lastly, you have a preview. A preview allows you to look at a snapshot of every single row or column inside of the row and column inside of your data set. Inside of your table, which is inside of your data set. And you can see a snapshot of, let's just say 50 rows of our 50,000 row sheet. So here, again, schema gives you the idea. Details will give you a quick breakdown of everything that's here. And then preview is going to show you what that looks like. You then have the awesome quick little buttons up here, which export, delete, snapshot, copy, share, and query. The query button is by far the most useful, because once you push that button and you hit open in a new tab, it will open up a new place, which is your query workspace or your SQL workspace, where you can actually start creating your queries of your information. And this right here is super helpful, where you can say, hey, I want to run something. So if we wanted to select, again, anything from this right here, I'm just hitting select everything. We're going to talk about this later. Do not worry about being like, I don't know what's happening. And if you hit run, that is going to actually run that question that you just asked of this. And I just said, select everything from this table, and only return 1,000, just for, again, a quick thing. One piece of information to note is just the format of how you look at something. So again, that structured hierarchy is extremely important, because here you can see we have our project of testing cool stuff, a dot, which says we're going down a level into CRM time demo, which is this one right here. And then lastly, we have the actual table name of contacts _3 table. So this is where we're saying, we're just identifying what it is. And if you ever want to save your work, you can hit save, and you can save the query of what you're looking for right there. So that is the quick overview. I always wanted to give you a quick example of just, hey, here's all the buttons. Let's not get too overwhelmed by the fact that it looks crazy. And then we'll start to actually building out something that makes sense in the next lessons here that is actually useful and ultimately just hopefully saves you some time. So that is the quick overview of the BigQuery interface and the SQL workspace.
Thank you so much for that, JJ. It does seem a little bit crazy and might be a little bit intimidating, but I know in the future lessons you are going to break it down, and it's going to make so much more sense once we get in there and start using it. So that was lesson 1, topic 4, overview of the BigQuery interface. Coming up next, let's review lesson 1, BigQuery, the foundations. We'll see you there. WIN Google BigQuery Basics. Let's review Lesson 1, BigQuery, the Foundations. What was your one thing? Was it the fact that BigQuery is not as expensive as you thought it was? That was my one thing. Or the fact that it can handle so much more than I was thinking. Like, that's just insane how many more cells and rows and everything it can handle. That was mine. So that's actually kind of two things. What was yours? And as always, we reference back to our measurement marketing framework. Again, if you want to dive deeper into each one of these different parts and pieces, you have the WIN measurement marketing framework to dive into. But here, in this particular lesson, we are mainly kind of talking about the plan. Is this something that you should use? And if so, how are you going to use it for your different clients? And as we kind of progress through this entire course, we will move from the plan and into the build. And so that's where you are at in your measurement marketing framework, all so that we can be able to launch, and that means listen, forecast, and optimize until we can go from being reactive to being proactive. All right, what did we cover in this lesson? Well, what was BigQuery and when to use it? What are the common problems does it solve? And do you need to use it? Then we talked about creating a BigQuery account. That's how to get started. And then we talked about all the pricings and how much it really doesn't, how much it doesn't cost. Syncing BigQuery with Google Analytics 4 and kind of why you want them together. So you can start having that data in there now and kind of what to expect. And then finally, an overview of the BigQuery interface. And then what are the different parts, obviously. And then don't be intimidated or anything like that now, or it is okay. Just make sure you come back and watch the next lesson so that we can explain those different parts and pieces so that you can kind of understand how all of it works together. And it could be a very useful tool for you to be able to use in the future for yourself. All right, what are your next steps? Well, you decide if you need to use BigQuery or not, and you probably will have to make this decision for each one of your different clients. And then possibly as you gain more clients, it's going to be a decision kind of as you're going through and thinking, again, going through your framework with them as you're planning out. And maybe, you get them a basic dashboard in your first 90 days, and then you know that you're eventually going to switch over to BigQuery. And maybe that's just something that you make part of your measurement marketing system for your particular agency or your company, and you just know that's what you want to do. But you have to decide for each one of your different clients if that's something you want to use. If you have a question, definitely utilize Ask an Instructor support. If you want to kind of like talk through something, we're definitely back there to help you with that. And just to kind of be familiar with the tool, even if you don't need it now, go ahead and create an account just exactly the same way JJ showed you. Create an account. You don't have to set up the billing if you don't want to, and just get around there and play with it. So connect Google Analytics 4, and so you can start seeing the data coming through. Be familiar with it so that if you happen to need to use BigQuery, you're a little bit more familiar with it. And then, as we mentioned, get familiar with BigQuery. Just kind of poke around and just see where things are at, and just get familiar with the tool. All right. And again, thank you very much, JJ, for coming in and going through this entire course, but this particular lesson, it was fantastic. If you want to know how to get a contact with JJ, he is back there in our winner circle. He is back there with Ask an Instructor support as well. And so just a reminder, if you have a question about BigQuery or this particular lesson, make sure you note BigQuery and lesson 1, lesson 2, whichever one it is, and we'll make sure we'll know what you're talking about. And he's obviously at mediaauthentic.com and datastudiovip.com, and that is his email for you to be able to contact him if you need to. So you have just watched lesson 1, BigQuery, the Foundations. Coming up next, lesson 2, your first BigQuery query. We'll see you there. Now we have our Q&A for our live studio audience. So everyone that is here, you guys can either use your Zoom thing reaction to raise your hand and or ask in chat. I see the chat's already kind of expanding. Anyone that's watching on replay, please use Ask an Instructor. You just heard JJ is back there and Ask an Instructor. So I will grab all those BigQuery questions and throw them at his way. And we will utilize the questions that we get in Ask an Instructor and probably ask them on like in the subsequent lesson. So like if we get any questions today, we'll relay them on tomorrow's Q&A if we have time, because we feel like some people may not realize they have that question right now, and it might be something that they have that will want to be answered later. So because it is a very unique tool. So let's go ahead and Nick. Nick is asking, can BigQuery replace our CRM, or should we think of BigQuery working in conjunction with our CRM? And JJ already responded. A great question, something that you would want to use to embellish your CRM data. I could give
I
an
can hop into
example.
that.
Thank you. All right,
Yeah,
cool.
I was
Do you
just
want to
waiting
share
for.
screens, or you want
Yeah,
me?
I'll share screens and I can give you the example
Perfect.
that Nick just asked. So here is what I would recommend. So here you should see, do you see a scratch paper here?
Yes. And which Nick is
Awesome.
this, real quick? Nick, can you tell me? Because I know we have another Nick that I told to get on here because he had a question. Is this the same Nick? I don't see your last name. Yeah. Okay. Thanks. That's Nick. I know you had the question, right?
So yeah. So basically, you have this. Just treat it like you have a data, or you have your tool of CRM, right? And what you'd want to do is you want to export the CRM data, and you'd want to treat it as if you were exporting that into a BigQuery table, right? So here is you'd want to figure out what question you're asking, right? This is, again, always come back to the question, because especially with a tool like BigQuery, there's no limitation to stop you from doing something at all. Whereas normally in Google Analytics, if we're dealing there, it's like, oh, you have a limit of it's session based, or a limit of it's something else, right? There's a limit of something. Whereas with BigQuery, there's no limit. So you can suck a lot of resources if you don't know what question you're asking, just trying to explore something. So here, you want to create an export of your BigQuery table, and then you want to figure out what am I actually connecting to. So for example, if you wanted to have a Data Studio report, right, you could connect this normally to just your CRM if they have a connector, right? But there might be some limitations to that connector of your CRM. If you want to say connect to HubSpot, there might be a limitation of saying, hey, you can only collect this much information from these many fields. What you can do is you can export your CRM data to a BigQuery table. Say maybe you wanted to have, I don't know, just whenever a customer record, and then maybe the tags associated. I'm just making up something here. Which then you could connect the BigQuery to this directly, right? You could say that, or another thing you could do is you could have your CRM flowing into here, and then you could also have, let's just say, your costs, your ad spend flowing into another table. Oopsies. Which you would then have here. So we have one table right here with your customers, and you have another table with your spend. And then now you could then say, I want to connect these together in a way that works for you. So I would say you're not going to use it to replace anything like a CRM, because it's just, why would you want to replicate something that's working inside of HubSpot? But if you ever needed to have like, for example, your costs or your result, or maybe you have a longer sales cycle and you can't analyze that within your CRM, you want to export that to a table, and then you can query that information and then connect it to Data Studio to visualize that. So that's a long answer to your short question, but hopefully at least gave you some context.
Very cool. So we'll give Nick a moment to see if he has any follow-up questions with that. And then Nick, if you wanted to ask the other part of your question too, you were having in ask an instructor, which is kind of that server side in BigQuery question, you can, or if you wanted to save that for another day, that's okay. And then Meryl, deja vu. Ha, and that's funny. He's saying in the early 90s, he had to do a bunch of SQL stuff in the mainframes at work. So it's deja vu for him. Yep.
I've got a question while Nick is typing stuff in if he wants. JJ, when you're creating like a new Google Analytics install for a client, would you just recommend like, hey, why not set up BigQuery? Like instead of growing into it, you just sort of like, hey, this thing is so cheap and maybe you won't need it, but it's not going to cost that much anyway. So go ahead and set it up. And then if that's a yes, it seems like a lot of clients won't have Google Cloud, right? And so is an additional sort of friction for them to get up and running. Could you create your own project and then eventually transfer that to the client?
Yeah, so you can do that. So you can do both of those methods. You can connect a BigQuery account to your account and then transfer that data set in the future to a client account. But it just depends, like kind of the litmus test is how technical, if you're working with clients, how technical those clients are. Because if you say, for example, hey, here's a list of all the scheduled queries we're running, and they're like, what? Like, what's a scheduled query? Which we're going to talk about in tomorrow's lesson, is then you're kind of like, I guess, like nothing, like you're kind of dead in the water, right? Because you're like, I have this awesome thing that I built for you guys, and I just need to transfer it to you. And then they're like, what are you talking about? So it just depends on the client, honestly. But there's a lot of flexibility. You can export things, you can import things, you can even just share. You could give someone else access to your table from their organization.
That's cool. So you can get kind of like a good enough to get going approach to this, knowing that you got flexibility to move it around to the right spot under the right ownership.
Yeah, you just have to really, really know of like what questions you're asking, because even in GA4 is extremely complicated. Like that's like the last day this week, everybody. So GA4 is extremely complicated to work with because of how it's all structured, and it's just a really complex platform. So just make sure you have a good question, and then ultimately, if it's helping the client, then they'll be off to the races.
Perfect. So I had another. Oh, sorry, go ahead. I was going to say, I have a quick question about the data streaming for a client like if us, measuremarketing.io, where we don't have as much traffic as some of the clients I know you work with, would that probably be not even pennies a day for us so we can have it? Because I know one of the things that Mercer and
Omar did it. It's not. It's we get charged a penny a month per JJ, which
means it's like you
percent probably, right?
Yeah, it just rounds up to a penny. I think if you click on billing, you can actually see like, oh yeah, we've been charged, because it's 0.002 cents per gigabyte.
Yeah, it's been. I can definitely attest to the pricing thing. It's been nothing.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what I was kind of curious, like for the smaller sites or smaller clients, like would that be something to do? So cool.
Yeah, it's going to be a penny. And like probably even in your case, Mercer from measuremarketing.io, like if you have the streaming on, like that's going to cost you more than the data storage. Remember those two GA4 checkboxes? The streaming costs you money because it's a separate service, one of the other Google Cloud like services technically. And so that's going to cost you an extra penny a day or a week or whatever it ends up being.
Yes. Just for anyone wondering, well, why would we want to do that? Is because Mercer and Amari, with our marketing director, they like those real-time reports. One of the holdbacks with our extracted data report is it makes it faster, but it only queries once a day. So if we're doing a launch or something, it's not as useful. They have to go use these slower reports. So we want something that's kind of real-time, but faster. And so that could solve that problem. And so we're always about solving problems, not just doing things just to do it.
And so I've got one other question, sorry, Julie, and then I'll let you get on to Alan and Nick's. But JJ, can you sort of explain the difference in terms of, because there's a lot of jargon with BigQuery. There's like the cloud account, but that's not actually a BigQuery account. It's like first you create the cloud account, and then there was data sets, and then there's tables, and it's like, so when you link GA4, did you automatically create a data set or did you create a table? Kind of, can you give like and I'm thinking when you have this tool up, it might be a good opportunity to sort of show like, here's how this fits together. Like, here's what this is a part of this, which is a part of that type of thing. If you can draw.
Yeah, no, that's
explain that structure.
That's the it's also the whole lesson tomorrow. So the whole lesson is organization.
Okay, cool. Yeah, as long as there's a way to sort of fit together and say, oh, here the table is.
Yeah, because it's extremely confusing. And also anybody who wants to watch the workshop Wednesday this week, it's all about that as well. The entire workshop is how to structure those things. But yeah, so basically like you just want to keep things organized, and I'll show you how to do that tomorrow. So keep on your toes.
I will sit back down and let Julie take it over.
But yeah, I see Alan's question in the chat. So can BigQuery be used as a data lake, or is it only for processing data? So the answer is yes and yes. So you can use it depending on your definition of a data lake. Again, one of those things that has a lot of different nuances, and maybe you can clarify if you want to, is you can store information there. So for example, we have a client where we just create a copy of all Facebook ads that has ever been live. And so in that sense, it's a data lake because we're just making a copy every single day of the previous ads that were live and their results. And so we're basically using it as a data lake. So then we now have a giant repository of every single ad that has ever been run if like Facebook decides to like die or but all those different types of things. And we can like query that information. Like I can, like the organization can look and say, I want to look at every ad that was live in October of 2019. And you just simply just have a little drag in Data Studio and you can pull all those up in an instant. So I think that answered your question, but if I missed data lake interpretation of how you want to use it, let me know. Yeah, exactly, Alan. He said exactly what I was thinking of, storing all data for future analysis. Exactly. So you can use it however you want to get information in. And we'll talk about that in lesson 3 about how to get information into BigQuery consistently and economically. And then I think Nick said, what if I build in browser side GTM and then want to export to server side later on? I was hoping to not have to start from scratch a year from now. So this is a question about GA4, how those things kind of work. So here's my little analogy is you have a Google Tag Manager account, you have server-side Google Tag Manager. And so these kind of talk to each other here. And maybe you have a cart that wants to send information to there as well. That information is then sent to GA4. Which you can then export to.
Are you sharing something or just
oopsie. Sure. Sorry.
It sounded like you were drawing something out. I want to make sure. Okay.
Yes. So here is what that looks like is you have a Google Tag Manager in your browser, which then is communicated to the server. That server then passes that information through GA4 and you can kind of move those things around. And then you can export GA4 to BigQuery. So GA4 in this case, like one of the things, if you watch the BigQuery or Google Analytics basics, is how long does GA4 want to hold on to your data? And by default, it is 2 months. And you could expand that up to, I think, 15 months, right? And that's how long it's going to like hold on to that account or information in your GA4 account. So here, what you're doing is basically just passing that information from Tag Manager, your browser, to the Tag Manager and server side, maybe embellishing that with cart information if you have it, if you want to. That then sends it to GA4, which then holds that data, but you're ultimately sending that information to BigQuery. And then you have BigQuery, which you're then going to query, and then you have your Data Studio. So we're going to go through all of this, everybody, over the next like lessons. So do not fret about being like, I don't know what in the world you're talking about. But this is kind of the workflow. And currently you could connect Data Studio directly to GA4, right? Like this device. And so it collects information in a method that we know, and then you send that information into BigQuery. BigQuery's biggest benefit, right? At the end of the day, no one cares about SQL. No one cares about like querying things. I don't even care about the querying of things. I'm not a nerd that wants to geek out and hop into a terminal all day long. What we care about is the visualization, right? That's all that 99.99% of people care about. And so that's like the reason why you'd want to, like, in my personal opinion, is because it loads so fast. Like that one table that I showed as far as the pricing example that has 55 million rows is actually like one of those tables is a live universal analytics connection. And it appends information. Every single event gets sent there and it costs us less than, like you saw the amount, like less than $10. And all the reports load in less than 2 seconds. No matter how many interactions you add on the page, no matter how many charts you add on the page, you can do anything you'd like to, and it loads within 2 seconds.
And if you have dashboards that are going to be used because they're not frustrating to use, meaning they're faster and not frustrating, and that means the client's going to be able to use them, they're going to be able to take those natural actions, and thus they're going to be able to go through and, you know, improve their marketing. That's the whole reason kind of why sometimes BigQuery is needing to be used. And now I have one final question, and I might be jumping the gun here, but I'm wondering, for the future, you know, obviously we all know universal analytics, we have a time on that. We're now at like 15, 14 months until it's completely gone, not going to collect data anymore. If we have a client that we've had for a long time. Measure market data, we have several of these that we've had for a long time. And so we know our data is clean and not breaking any rules, meaning we don't have PII already stored. If we wanted to take some of this data and put it into some sort of storage solution so that we have trending data and we can go back and compare and all that. So we're already transitioning clients to use GA4. We're doing all of that. But my question is, like, what if we wanted to be able to have annual data or, quarter, whatever it is, we want to do that. What would your storage solution be? Would it be BigQuery? Would it be something else? And then, yeah.
Yeah. So if you were trying to get universal analytics, so you have that for like years on end, is that more or less?
Yes.
So I would suggest is because GA4 is so different than universal, and it's not going away 100%, it's just like going away and then it's probably be deleted eventually, is writing down in like a Google sheet, like what it is that you're trying to measure and those like KPIs. Because overall it's all shifting. Like you could do an export of all the universal analytics data, not all of it. Like you're limited in what you export to 7 dimensions and 10 metrics for any export from universal analytics. So you can't export everything. It's impossible.
But you can choose certain things you want. And we do have the date. So the data stops collecting on July 1st, 2023. So that's when data stops collecting. Everything's going to be deleted out of universal 6 months after that. So basically walking into 2024 with no universal data whatsoever. Yeah. So that's what I'm like, and for anyone that has PII.
So what I'd suggest in that case, right, honestly, is just set up GA4 now, and then you have a year of data, because it's going to keep being like, it's just so different. Like there's 2 different platforms that it's really difficult to be like, here's what we need to do. My honest suggestion, even for our clients, is like, just write it down in Google Sheets, like export it manually, and then upload it to Google Sheets.
Using the Google Sheet plugin that we've all known about. That's in Win Google Sheet, or Win funnel tracking, and Win Google Sheets, I believe is what it is.
Exactly.
We'll use, okay, so that kind of handles that, because I feel like that's going to be a common question, like, where do I put all my universal data? And I'm going to have a little tidbit. If you have any PII, you should not be storing the data anyway. So that's, I was trying to stress that. We know we don't have PII, but if you accidentally do, you should not be storing it anyway.
And Carolyn, sorry.
I was
going to say that you can, and again, tomorrow's lesson or the next lesson, I'm going to show you how to upload a Google Sheet to BigQuery. So then you can have whatever you want. Like if you just have an export of a CSV or a Google Sheet, I'll show you how to get that into BigQuery so you can store it in like a super cheap solution. Even if you have multiple sheets that you want to like kind of append to each other, we can do that.
Cool.
Because can you do calculations? Sorry, Carolyn asked, can you do calculations on data in BigQuery? And yep, that's the beauty of BigQuery. It's called a query. That's the questions. The calculations is called query.
Because they couldn't come up with a better name.
I know. I'm like, it's a big query. I'm like, pun intended. This is going to be a big query. And so, yeah, we'll talk about that again tomorrow. We just wanted to cover the basics of what it is today. And then PII stands for personal identifiable information. So that's like first name, last name, etc. And email addresses, all of that jazz. And you can just to clarify one thing is that you're allowed to store PII in BigQuery, right? So like if you wanted to export your CRM data into BigQuery, you're allowed to do that. Like that's permitted. It's just the collection of universal analytics that was where that was the problem, I believe.
Yes, thank you for that clarification. Cool. And BigQuery equals first party data, meaning you're allowed to keep it. Yeah, there you go. Thank you, Mercer. All right, we're going to give everyone about a few more moments. JJ, if you want to stop sharing screens and I'll pick it back up. Share. And so for everyone here live or listening to the recording, again, if you have questions, make sure you let us know, ask an instructor. If you can't attend live, as we mentioned, use Ask an Instructor. Let us know what it is you have questions about. Videos and screenshots, always helpful. Specific scenarios always helps give context to what kind of questions you have. We are definitely here to guide you on your BigQuery journey over here. And so let's go ahead. I don't see anything else. We'll close it out. So thank you for watching W.I.N Google BigQuery Basics. We'll see you all on tomorrow with lesson 2. Thank you again, JJ, and we'll see you guys all later.